Good morning, and thank you for joining us for what is now our fourth webinar in this Essential 8 series. Today we're talking about the backups control, and as usual, I'm joined by Phil. Good morning, Phil. Thanks for coming back.
Morning.
And we're also joined this morning by Leon Friend from ConnectWise, who's Principal Sales Engineer. Welcome, Leon. Thanks for joining us, mate. It's good to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, so just carrying on from the previous webinars that we've done this is a deep dive into the Essential 8 controls. And the reason we did these is because through conducting a lot of audits, gap assessments, maturity assessments, we're finding a lot of consistency in controls, control gaps, potentially misinterpretations of what Essential 8 is looking for. So we thought we'd put these series together and dive into each of the controls, 30 minutes, open conversation, and really unpack them for clients and across a range of sectors. So today we're doing backups, as I said, and we're joined by Leon. Quick intro, Leon, to yourself. We're, I believe, a veteran of the Australian IT industry with over 28 years of experience, including 14 years in cybersecurity. So that is a veteran in cybersecurity in this day and age, particularly around network and endpoint protection, right?
Yep.
Certified instructor, providing technical training to reseller system engineers across Australia, New Zealand, China, South Korea, and Hong Kong, as well as end users and project teams. And more recently, Leon's focused on network security with channel enablement through education and supporting activities around solution design, customer engagements, as well as offering definition and marketing initiatives. This is a fairly impressive CV, mate. I have 31 licenses and certifications.
I feel like I need to cut that down.
What's that, sorry?
I feel like I need to cut that down and get rid of half of that because it's like.
I think that's fantastic, mate. To be honest, I'd keep running with that. That's impressive. 31 certs as well. So we're not going to be able to dive into all of that experience, unfortunately, but we do want to dive into what you're doing and what you're seeing around backups within ConnectWise. But maybe as a starting point, can you give everyone a bit of background to ConnectWise? Because obviously a few acquisitions in the mix there, which may be some brands that people recognise.
Yeah, so I guess it's ConnectWise. We've been around a long time. We started off as an MSP back in the 80s, but more recently, I guess in particular around the backup space, we made a couple acquisitions. We had the the Skykick acquisition, which was focused on backups, cloud migrations, and also had a nice security manager for managing policies across multiple tenancies in Microsoft, that sort of thing. So that's a great cloud solution. We also acquired another company by the name of Axiom, which has a really strong portfolio around on-premise and server backups, that sort of side of it. But historically, we have done other backup services. So we offer co-manage to help you monitor and make sure that the backups are working, that sort of stuff, and try to remediate the failures for you without your teams having to get involved, through to just selling other solutions as well.
Yeah, and primarily working with managed services providers.
Yeah, absolutely. We basically work only with managed service providers.
Yeah, and from again, straight to the topic of backups, what sort of stuff are you seeing in that channel when in relation to backups? Is there a real drive in this space, or where does it sit within the MSP community?
Well, I think historically MSPs had a really strong backup service around servers and on-premise infrastructure, that sort of stuff. So I guess the trend we've been seeing is as people are moving to more cloud services rather than just cloud workloads, we're seeing a lot of questions and a lot of activity around people trying to figure out how to back up their 365 tenancies, their Google workspaces, etc. But also what's being backed up in there. because we've seen plenty of ones where, for example, people backing up the data within the tenancy, but they're not backing up the security structures. So when something goes over, they have to spend a lot of time rebuilding that sort of stuff. So that's probably where I'm spending most of my time helping people figure out what's right for their customers.
Yeah. Phil, what are we seeing from an audit perspective at MyEmpire when you're looking particularly at this control?
What I've noticed, Alex, when I look at this control, like I've noticed two things. One on the process side, so organizations seem to, I guess, at times overlook, the BCP requirements, RTOs and RPOs, to effectively, I guess, back up systems and data. So there's two components there. So as Leon alluded to, so one would be the data, understanding the data that the organization needs to back up, and also the systems. When I say systems, it's things that like what I mean by that would be, switch configs, firewall configs, whether it's a hybrid environment, exchange configurations, that sort of thing. Sometimes they can be overlooked because the focus seems to be shifting primarily to M365 cloud. So that's what I've noticed conducting the audits, that a focus on that more traditional infrastructure seems to be at times overlooked. And that's important for the organization to have that broader look at the environment to encapsulate everything so nothing gets left out of that.
If I could add to that, I think what I see is often the MSPs don't have visibility of that business continuity plan, so they don't know what they're trying to back up. And with Essential 8, it's really critical to map to that business continuity plan, because that defines exactly what Phil was talking about. Like, what do I need to back up to get this thing working again if something happens?
In fact, I was going to ask that question actually around the BCP. So are they coming at it purely or primarily from a technical perspective without understanding business context? Is that, if I were to summarize?
That's something we see regularly, yep.
Right, okay, yep. And that's obviously from the MSP channel, Phil, but are you seeing that across end clients as well?
I do see it. I do see that, Alex. There seems to be at times a disconnect between business and IT in organizations. So internal IT teams don't necessarily map all the systems to the business continuity plans. So there seems to be a bit of a disconnect there. That's what we've identified in the audits. And some organizations don't have predefined BCP plans also. So it's just that educational piece to take them on that journey to help them along with that.
And it's probably also that they don't have the predefined BCD plans, but it's also that they actually often don't even understand the assets that they've got to back up that are critical to the business.
Yeah,
correct.
That's been a consistent theme through the previous 3 of these webinars we've done when we've looked at some of the other controls. It's lack of visibility. That seems to be one of the most consistent themes that I've heard, both in these series, but also through conversations at other conferences. It's fundamental to everything we do.
It's what makes the Essential 8 so hard for many MSPs to package up and do something with, because they don't understand what they're trying to protect or trying to manage.
Take that a step further. Is that because they're not being given the information by the clients, or they're not asking the right questions? So in scope for
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's to start with, sometimes their MSPs they don't necessarily have that deep level of engagement where they like to think they're the trusted advisor, but sometimes I think as Phil alluded to, the internal IT is, or the IT part of it is so hands off and so foreign to most business owners that they don't even know what to share. So therefore, the MSP needs to actually, in some ways, almost become like a business coach and actually get in there and go, well, what are we doing here? What is it? Literally, what do you do day to day, so that we can try, because you have to discover what tools they're using because they can't tell you what tools they're using. Is probably the way to think of it.
Yeah, yeah. With the maturity levels, Phil, as you go up from ML1 to ML3, what are the changes? Like to get to ML1,
Okay.
what do I need to do? How does that evolve?
Yeah, no worries. So ML1 basically, what they're looking for there is they want to ensure that organizations do have a backup solution and that the backup solution is aligning with the business continuity plan. So they do ask for BCP at that level. And then as you move up the maturity levels, it becomes more a question of access into backups and who can actually modify backups. So what I mean by that is, like if you go to maturity level 2, they'll say only, backup administrators have the ability to, they're the only ones that have the ability to actually update backup jobs or modify jobs, and that's at that level. No, and then you move over to ML3, where ML3 is looking at restricting even privileged accounts from accessing backup data. So your global admins and your domain admins shouldn't have access into the backup environment. That should be totally separate by another account. And the reason for that is, I guess the ACC, they're looking at, if an account is compromised on the network, they want to avoid from the bad actor getting into those backups. So they want to keep it totally separate and just reduce the attack surface essentially. And also at, I guess, maturity level 3, you start considering things like immutable backups. So backups that can't be changed within a specific period of time. It's immutable. You set your policies. There's no altering of data and secure it in that way. So that's typically the progression that it follows, Alex.
I'm going to ask a really silly, simple question here. Probably Leon for yourself here, mate. Sorry. How hard is it to get to ML3?
It's a fair bit of work. I mean, how hard will depend on what you're trying to back up and the tools that you're using to do the backups, right? I'd say the biggest challenge is, understanding the processes needed and the people involved in the processes so that, for example, you can create those break glass accounts and things so that that it's appropriate. In some ways, this is not dissimilar to some of the other controls. It's like the understanding that you need separate accounts to do some of this management and all these sort of things because it's that isolation. It's that managing that. Again, it starts off with that BCP plan and what we're doing because then we can follow that bounty ball because some of the controls at level 3 are just baked into some of the tools so that it's really just a matter of configuration. Others, sometimes it means changing tools. So it really depends what we're trying to do.
Yeah, okay. It's but fundamentally it comes back to, we were talking a technical control, but the reasons you're not going to get the maturity is the non-technical aspects of this. It's
correct.
It's the auditing of systems. It's the development of a business continuity plan, doing business impact assessments, and really understanding, what can go wrong, how long you can be without it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think honestly, the reason that I see most end users not able to achieve level 1 maturity at the backup thing is not because of the backup tools in the MSP. It's because it's the lack of business continuity plan, the lack of understanding the assets and what they need to do to get back up and running.
Yeah.
And that just flows all the way through.
Is that what you're seeing, Phil? When you
100%. Yeah, I agree 100%. The lack of those policies and processes in the beginning, and I guess certain organizations don't understand the full context of their environment, and that also gets in the way at times from them being able to achieve ML1 as a start. As Leon said, they do have the tools in place. A lot of them, they've got the solutions, but the process sometimes is a gap for them.
I mean, I'll stick up for MSPs. Often they're really good at doing backups.
Yeah.
It's just that lack of alignment and that lack of visibility that just trips them up.
Where does restoration testing fit within E8?
Sorry, Alex.
Restoration, so recovery of your backup, testing of
Yeah.
your recovery. Where does that fit within the maturity levels of V8?
I think that would be ML1. That's the basic.
Yeah.
You should be testing your backups. I know most backup solutions do have verification checks at the end of the backup, which will make sure that everything's good. But good practice would be for organizations to periodically test the restoration of a mailbox, a server, depending on the infrastructure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it
What that verification test looks like is really important too.
Correct.
Is that a common gap though? Like that process piece, or are organisations putting the tools in place, doing a quick look at, yep, I've got a tick on the tool, say it's, validated, but is it common for organisations to actually be physically testing recovery of backups?
From what I've seen, and jump in, Leon, and with your experience, I've seen it's 50-50. From the audits that I've done, some organizations do it well. They even lock it in their ticketing system that they restored a mailbox or they've done tests, and other organizations, it's ad hoc. It's only when something goes wrong, they've had to raise a ticket or something, change management to restore a service. I haven't seen much, I guess, process around planned restoration of services. When I say services, I mean, planned restoration of an ERP system within an organization, bring it up in a dev environment, restore it. I haven't seen that very often. It's more the ad hoc restorations of a file or an email or a calendar invite that they seem to demonstrate. But it's important also for organizations to understand the restoration of not only those types of data sets, but also systems, especially if it's a hybrid environment. Very important for them to test.
From a tooling perspective, Leon, is there, you've obviously got a few acquisitions in there, you've got a few different solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Hybrid environments, obviously, complex environments. Do organizations need to have multiple solutions, or is there some consistency that they can apply a single tool for backups across their entire fleet or across their entire stack? This is the product pitch. Jump in.
Well, no, I mean, I want to try and avoid the product pitch, right? But the reality is that more often than not, there's going to be more than one backup tool that's in play, because there are different strengths and different reasons. For example, server backups are so different to doing, for a hybrid environment, are so different to doing backing up a 365 tenancy. And then sometimes tools that do really good 365 tenancy backups don't necessarily do like Google Workspaces and stuff. So depending on the customer, it's about the needs. I'll say, and I apologize, Phil, because my audio cut out on there partway through your answer. So if I'm duplicating or off track, just sort of call me out. For example, with the acquisition that we had with Axient, one of the really strong plays they have is they have a full run book, which allows you to restore your servers and workstations into a virtual environment. So, to that last point you made, Phil, it's like I can boot it up and have it existing, and I can check it. Like I can log in and make sure everything works. But the flip side is they also have the common verification tools that sort of say, the server could, you get those screenshots to say, yep, the server's booted, and it's all sort of there. I see a lot of people sort of just rely on that bit and not do the next bit with the run books and the actual testing. Yeah. And this might sound a bit, and this is not related to a ConnectWise tool, but this is one I've seen in the past, and that is like, this is the story around maintaining those accounts and the reasons for break glass accounts and all those sort of things. Because I have seen an instance where a partner had an account, and in that customer account, a malicious actor got in and didn't delete the backup jobs. They just disabled the backup of the data drive. So they just deselected the data drive. So all the screenshots and everything looked good. But nobody noticed that the backup had shrunk by like 10 gig, right? So because it was only backing up the boot drive. So that's why like that continuity plan, what are we backing up? Where are we monitoring and we checking the audits? And the point of checking, because it's not just like, hey, I can boot the server. It's like, does the data actually exist? Those sorts of things is really important. And that's why the full recovery test can be quite useful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I touched on it earlier. I'm just thinking, this is me thinking very much out loud. It sort of asked the question of how hard it is to get to ML3, but when we're speaking to clients and we're doing these gap assessments, we'll often ask them, what's the target? Where do you want to be at? And some will say, look, we need to get to ML1, we need to get to ML2. Very rarely do we hear people say, we need to hit ML3.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like if there's a control within E8 that's the outlier that you go, you know what, you probably need to stretch and try and make the whole thing. This one feels like, one, the achievable one, but two, the most important one, to really cover off everything within all three maturity levels. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. Go ahead, Leon. Yep.
I was going to say, yeah, I think that's probably not too far off the mark. I mean, the reality is like, if we think of what we're talking about with the context of backups, it's like all hell's broken loose, everything's gone, right? This is our last man standing. This is what gets us back up and going. So yes, I think it's probably that one control that's worth stretching on. I sort of agree with you, Alex, in that most of the time, most people I talk to is like they're even questioning if they have to get to level 1, let alone level 2 or level 3, right? Yeah. And my position is usually, hey, pick a framework, go with a framework. Essentially, it's pretty good. It's you can always move to another framework later. But the backups, I think, as you say, is really critical. It's like everything else has happened. It's like it's not necessarily something happens because of a cyber attack. It's like literally, that server in the corner physically died, right? Mm-hmm. It's not always about backups. Is not just about cyber attacks. It's about business continuity.
Yeah. I agree, Alex. I agree with that. Yep.
Yeah. What about from the MSPs then? What can they do differently to improve maturity for themselves and their clients then? Because MSPs are typically the consultants that will do business continuity planning. So is there something more that they can do other than guide or tell their client to go and get this done and come back to them? Or should I frame it another way? The ones that are doing it better, what are they doing? The ones that are more active in this space, maybe, are they doing something different to get better outcomes for their clients?
If I might, I'll speak up first and just sort of say, I think what I see is the ones that are doing better and getting better results are the ones that stretch and start to reach into that sort of consulting role, because their customers don't have a consultant and they just have to stretch. You go, well, it's also about protecting the MSP, right? Because the MSP needs to know that the right controls are in place and that they can do it. It's like, it's all well and good saying I'm backing up your cloud tenant to your Microsoft, but if all the critical data doesn't exist in the Microsoft tenancy, then it's useless, right? And as I said, I think I said it earlier, it's about that stretching, engaging the customer to do that, discovery of what they're using, because they can't tell you what they're using. And they don't tell you about all the scenarios. I mean, the simple one that I used to use all the time was, do you back up the CEO's laptop? It's like, no. It's like, okay, does he save everything in OneDrive? It's like, yes. It's like, are you sure? Because I don't know, Alex, about you, but so many times I run into scenarios like, yeah, they save everything in one, and then his laptop dies, and then we're in trouble because he's got a board meeting and he's got no data, right? That's the context. It's like, drill into that. And don't be afraid to get into those awkward conversations, because it is awkward for most customers. Just it's an MSP thing. They just assume their MSP does everything for them. But if we look at the data responsibility pie and get into it, it's like, well, the MSP can only help what you tell them. And in this case, it's one where the MSP has to probably drive harder to get that info.
Yeah. Phil, I'm conscious that we've only got a couple of minutes here left, so I'll sort of I think we've been covering off this quite a bit, but I think it's probably a good opportunity just to circle back. And I guess two things: the most common mistake that you are seeing when you're doing these audits, or misconception, and then number one tip for successful alignment. I think I know the answer to that. I think there's probably two tips. We've covered them a couple of times, but I do want to reinforce that point because it is such a critical one. And before you answer that, I just want to say that backups are probably, for mine, the most important, most sensitive one, particularly given the backstory and given the impacts on what happened to my business many years ago, right? We had layers of backups, but integrity compromised without that ability to, or without that process of testing, regularly checking, and knowing that you can restore critical systems in a period of time, led to obviously a whole series of follow-up events and outcomes which were not ideal, shall we say. So for me, this again is the most critical one. But from what I see when I speak to clients, it's exactly just reinforcing what you're saying. Is one, it's my MSP's problem, and all they're doing is backing up the core system. It might be the most critical one in terms of the cloud tenancy, but I think it's I won't say shadow IT, maybe it is the shadow IT, but it's all the critical stuff that the MSP is not visible or not aware of that's causing the bigger problems when something happens. That's definitely something I see quite regularly. But Phil, sorry, that was me rambling. Phil, what's the most common gap that we're finding?
Yeah, so the most common gap I'm finding would be the business continuity alignment with the BCPs during the E8s.
Sorry, is that a lack? Is that just a lack of documentation, a lack of planning altogether, or a lack of alignment with something that's been planned?
A lack of documentation and also a lack of a bit of understanding the context of business. Because when we dig a bit deeper, the true understanding is not there. So I guess understanding of the value of the assets is also very important for them to be able to articulate these BCP processes. So that's one. And the other one would be the testing. As I mentioned, like it's very important to test to make sure all your data sets are there and the integrity is there of those systems. And I guess those are the two key ones, and also having visibility to like the key understanding, as Leon mentioned, like what are they backing up? Are they backing up everything that's critical to the business? Having that catalog of systems and criticality rating is also very important, and that's a gap that I've seen. Not necessarily the tools that they're using, from my experience, but more around the process and understanding. Yeah.
Leon, I see you nodding there, so I suspect you're in alignment.
Yeah. I think that's right. It's like, the process and the alignment's really where the shortfall is. I think I said it earlier. MSPs are great at doing backups. It's the reality is I think the vast majority of MSPs I talk to when we're talking about their customers is they say my customer doesn't have a BCP plan or I don't know what it is, right? That's just the pitfall. I just thought there's one other thing that I might just add, the testing component. The other thing is that, and you alluded to it earlier, Alex, as well. Like, there's two things about the testing. One is, yes, it makes sure the backups work. It also makes sure you know how to do a restore.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's like the best backups. If you don't know how to do the restore, backup's pointless, right? Because the data can be sitting there and no one knows how to get it back. And I guess the other side is, all this is about access. This is why the criticality of the system is like, you alluded to it just a minute ago, Alex. Is like I could back up the 365 tenancy, or if I don't back up the switches and the firewall and stuff, it's like I get my server back up and running, but nobody can talk to it because there's no infrastructure around it, right? So it's important to make sure you map that out.
Yeah, spot on. I'm wondering whether we shouldn't put a recommendation into ACSC to change the control to business continuity planning rather than backups to give a better context, but that's probably another conversation for another day.
That falls down to the whole language about what they're trying to achieve, and people understand the word backup, but they don't understand the word business continuity plan.
Yeah, which leads to the disconnect in terms of meeting the maturity levels.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
circular. Yeah. We are at half hour. It goes very quick, these things. So let's pause there. I just want to thank you, Leon, for jumping on. Really appreciate taking the time, mate,
You're more than
and
welcome.
getting your insights. Thank you again, Phil. A reminder to anyone that is listening that the next webinar, which is the last of this particular series, we're going to touch on application control in 2 weeks' time on the 2nd of June. So please go on to our website or LinkedIn to register. You can also view the previous webinars through our website and through YouTube as well. So thanks again, guys. I really appreciate you sharing all your expertise and experience on this particular topic.
Again, thanks for having me, Alex. Always happy to get involved and help out with these discussions. It's always fun.
Thanks, Leon.
Cool.
Thanks, Phil. Cheers.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Leon. Bye.
Thanks, guys.